everyone, welcome back. We're diving into something a little different today. You hear all this global stuff going on, but sometimes the most interesting stories are happening right in our own backyard. We're going to be talking about a local controversy that actually even got the police involved. It all started with a podcast.
Yeah, that's right. So this piece we're looking at is titled "Police Mediate as Mockery of Newari Accent Sparks Outrage." And it goes into how this podcast, hosted by Sushant Pradhan, with guests Sajan Shrestha, Utsav Sapkota, and Sujan Zimba, well, they made fun of a singer named Sagar's Newari accent in his songs. What we're going to try to do in this deep dive is see why this blew up like it did, what reactions it caused, and what it tells us about being sensitive to different cultures when we talk about things publicly.
Yeah, so basically this podcast, they were going for laughs, I guess.
Yeah.
And they made fun of how Sagar pronounces words in his Nepali songs, specifically his Newari accent.
Exactly. And the reaction was, well, there was a ton of anger, especially from the Newar community. And it makes sense when you think about it, because for a lot of Newars, their accent is like a huge part of who they are and where they come from. I mean, historically, minority languages and dialects haven't always been treated fairly. So when someone makes fun of their accent, it can really hit a nerve.
Yeah. So it wasn't just about his singing. It was more like they were attacking their whole culture, their identity. Why do you think it was seen as such a direct attack on their heritage?
Well, language is how we express our culture, right? It's at the core of it. So when people make fun of a certain dialect, it can feel like they're disrespecting the entire community and their history. It's like putting them down. And this article, it highlights how people saw it as demeaning a minority way of speaking. And, well, it could even reinforce negative stereotypes, especially in a diverse society like ours.
And social media, blew this whole thing up. The article talks about how there was this huge wave of people condemning what happened. People were really worried about, people not caring about linguistic diversity and how it could lead to even more discrimination. Was there anyone in particular, like any influencers or community leaders who really got the ball rolling on that?
Actually, the source doesn't really point to any specific people. But I think the fact that it spread so fast online shows just how strongly the community felt about this. It was like their collective voice, and that definitely made more people aware of what was going on.
And then the police had to get involved. You don't see that every day, the police having to step in because of something that happened on a podcast. It just shows you how serious this whole thing got, right?
Oh, for sure. Having the authorities intervene, it tells you that they were worried things might get out of hand. They wanted to find a solution that respected everyone's cultural feelings. This wasn't just a little argument. It really shows how closely connected language and identity are.
So, stepping back a bit, thinking bigger picture, what can we learn from this? What does it tell us about the responsibility that people in the public eye, like these podcasters, have when they talk about cultural stuff?
This whole thing really brings home the power of words. It reminds us that when you have a platform and people are listening, you have to be careful. You're reaching a lot of different people from all kinds of backgrounds. And this incident, it just highlights how crucial it is to be aware of and sensitive to other cultures, especially when you're talking about them publicly. Humor can be tricky, right? What one person thinks is funny might be really offensive to someone else, especially when it's about something as personal as their language and identity.
It's true. So this whole controversy with the Newari accent, it's like a big example of this bigger question. How do we balance freedom of speech and the right to make jokes with respecting other cultures and making sure everyone feels like they belong, especially now when everyone's so connected? It reminds us that our words have power and that even if we don't mean to offend anyone, we can still cause a lot of harm if we're not careful about cultural sensitivity.
And that brings us to something for all of you listening to think about, going off of how this source wraps up. It's a question that doesn't have an easy answer. How do we navigate this tricky space where humor, free speech, and cultural dignity all intersect? It's not simple, but it's definitely something worth pondering. Our words carry weight, and not being sensitive to other cultures can have a real impact. Think about that.